Hello, my name is Sister Grace Walle. I'm a Marianist sister, and I'm grateful that I have been at St. Mary's now for almost 40 years. I entered the Marianist Sisters in 1971, and our novitiate is here in San Antonio, Texas. And I had met the Marianist in Cape May, New Jersey when I got to know them as a teenager. And they asked me if I was interested in being a Marianist sister. Now, I was from a very traditional group that I had Catholic education all my life, but the nuns always seemed scary to me. So when I met the Marianist brothers, there was a real spirit of hospitality. They were very engaged in work with in education, with families, with youth, and I would help out. I would volunteer. And as a result, when the brothers asked me, did I want to be a Marianist sister, I said no. But I said, oh, if the Marianist sisters are like the brothers, I'll join, just thinking I was pretty safe. But I met the Marianist sisters, and over about 2-year period, I decided that that was really true, that God was calling me into this Marianist family. And our headquarters is here, the novitiate was here in San Antonio, Texas. So I began my journey of almost now 45 years as a Marianist sister. And my education was completed here at St. Mary's University, and I graduated in 1978. I came back to St. Mary's after a little time at our retreat house, which is now the Center for Legal and Social Justice. I made vows at what is now the Center for Legal and Social Justice, so I love the history that our building was able to be turned into what is a wonderful center that helps those who cannot afford legal services and gives students the experience of outreach to clients who aren't the most organized or the most aware of what legal access they do have. But over the years, we've helped so many people. So I'm very proud of the fact that Retreat House became the Center for Legal and Social Justice, and that I was able to extend my services. The Marianist Sisters, at the time when we finished it being a retreat house, I came over here in campus ministry in 1981. And for 10 years, I worked in undergraduate campus ministry. Most of the students are now older adults, probably in their 50s, but a lot of great stories from their early days of working on retreat programs with them and leadership development and just our Christian life communities that grew at that time. As a result, I also was interested in helping older students, because I recognized at St. Mary's University there was an older student population and they really weren't connected as well. The opportunities for them, because they had families, were more limited. And a number of our staff on campus were also going to school, especially at noontime. So I started helping with the then Alice Fransky. She was a sociology teacher, an older student herself, having become a doctorate in sociology. She had started a group for older students. And then I joined her with outreach from campus ministry and created, after a while, a scholarship for older students, and our funds would come from Oyster Bake. So there was a day when I was involved in Oyster Bake, helping them set up their booth. It was a rainy Saturday when I was pushing a cart of brownies across the campus. And at that point, I knew my days of doing booths at Oyster Bake were limited. But as a result, the students continued that for many years, and the funds were able to fund scholarships for older students. And then shortly after Alice Fransky's death, with great regard and for her and her work, she donated her retirement fund so that the Alice Fransky Scholarship continues to this day. And I still help with the undergraduate group to award the Alice Fransky Scholarship. But as a result of getting in addition, as a result of getting to know single parents, I had another donor came and wanted to help single parents. And so since I was already working with older adults, I started outreach to single parents. And subsequently was on a committee with the law school. And so I shared with them that we had this single parent fund. The first student that ever got a single parent scholarship, many years later, her then 10-year-old son became a law student and graduated, and Tricia Heil. And I'll never forget when her son walked across the stage and she was able to hood him, that I could see a fund that helped somebody at the very beginning and watch her grow into a very outstanding attorney and have her son follow in her footsteps. You can't beat those days of that kind of history of knowing people for so long that you get to see that. Now at the law school, I've been here so long that there are many relatives or family members of the law students when I first came down here in 1994. So as a result of being on this committee, and I would fill in for the then Father John G. Lias, a Marianist priest, older at the time, but well regarded, who did a lot of ministry with the faculty at the law school. And he also helped with sacramental ministry, marriage, baptisms for the law students. Around that same time as the students, as I was getting a little older, and the students' programs and meetings didn't begin till 11 o'clock at night, I realized that there was some interest in my going to the law school. So the then Barbara Aldave, the first woman law dean, I had gotten to know her because she was very committed to justice work, very involved with the Pax Christi, a religious sisters organization. And in the course of interacting and helping out here and there, because Father John G. couldn't go to evening events after a while, I would be invited to lead prayer. So in the course of time, the invitation came for me, would I like to do law ministry? And at the time, there wasn't really a program as such. So I still have the first paper that Father John G. Lias gave me. You love it. It was in typed. I've been here so long that you might not all remember Purple Ditto and a typewriter. So yes, I had to learn the computer. Yeah, and I'll just read briefly because I think it's great that I still have in my files that what he told me would need to be done at the law school. A clear job description of her presence. Well, I created my own job description after a while. An open invitation to the campus minister to be present at all faculty meetings. That's true to this day. I've had a number of opportunities to lead prayer at faculty meetings, and even as our faculty members, some have passed away, the most touching things for me has also been to lead services in remembrance of our faculty. I've traveled with our faculty. I've had many a party with our faculty. So there was more than an open invitation to be present to faculty meetings. An office with easy access. There's a trail outside that's pretty easy to tell how to get here because there's a lot of advertising and the famous peanut butter and jelly. For some reason, I got known. I had some money left over. I put out coffee as the very first thing I did at the law school. I had an empty closet. I had a desk, but nobody knew me. So I put out coffee, and I had peanut butter and jelly left over from an event. And I just put it out one day, and I realized how the law students were flocking to it. And over time, it just got to be a respite for law students to find their way to the peanut butter and jelly table. In fact, they even photographed me with holding up peanut butter and jelly. There's a picture somewhere of this. I think, oh yeah, it's somewhere. And as we were doing the props and holding up and changing the pose, I put down the peanut butter and jelly prop, and subsequently some law student thought that was a good idea and took it away because they were hungry. So there's many a story of peanut butter and jelly. Are you a fold over or grape versus strawberry? But just a lot of goodwill, and a lot of people donated back to the peanut butter and jelly. And to this day, I was at an event the other night for the Women's Bar Association awarding the single parent scholarship. They continued, as I needed a matching donor, way back to this other story of starting the single parent scholarship. So I needed another matching donor. And in 1997, the Bexar County Women's Bar Association granted my request and has continued to award a single parent law student each year. And this year it was very gracious of them to also increase the amount of funds. Every law student that has been a recipient of this award is always touched because it comes at a time when they are most in need. Parenting, going to law school, and parenting as a single parent. So it was touching the other night. But as I was on the Zoom interaction, several of the people said, as part of the get to know you, "Sister, do you still have the peanut butter and jelly?" And I said, well, COVID did a little number on that with not being able to have open jars and easy access as we once did. But luckily, HEB creates peanut butter and jelly bars in grape, strawberry, and banana. So we're covered for still feeding the law students. And then luckily Keurig came along, and so it's much easier than leaving a pot of coffee on all day. And so anyway, so I started out with this little note from Father John G. Lias, and that's 30 years of following a little guideline that he left me. A special committee of faculty members, I worked with them to relay specific needs and attention to the campus minister. Liturgies, I followed several of the faculty who coordinated Red Mass, and I've since coordinated, I think it's the Archbishop Gustavo said, "How many of you coordinated?" I said, I think about probably 26 or so, 26 Red Masses with the Archdiocese of San Antonio, with all the archbishops presiding. Archbishop Gustavo is especially gracious as he greets me every year, gives me a big hug, and thanks me for bringing the legal community together to ask blessings on the start of the judicial and academic year. So I've been very blessed as a result of one of the first things I did, which was coordinating Red Mass, to get to know many in the legal community.
Can you tell us more about Red Mass?
Oh, I'd be glad to. So when I first started coordinating Red Mass, one of the people who was a friend of mine said, you know, you really should get a committee together, and they can be great advisors for you. And I thought, no, that's a really good idea. And I asked the then Dean Aldave, who do you think we should get? And she said, oh, there's a new justice on the Fourth Court of Appeals, Justice, and then subsequently Chief Justice Alma Lopez. And she is an undergrad and a law grad of St. Mary, so she'd be great. See if she can come to your committee. And then several other, I had several students at the time. They have since, Judge Rosie Gonzalez and Janae Gonzalez, who works for the Marianist province of the United States in development. The two of them have, I think they've been to as many Red Masses as I have, having started when they were students at St. Mary's. And for many, many years, Chief Justice Alma Lopez served so graciously. She was always connected to people. She knew who to call. We arranged for the judges to robe in the Fourth Court of Appeals, which that tradition continues to this day. And after her retirement, she would continue to lead the blessing. We have special blessings at the end of Red Mass, blessings for judges and legislators led by a judge, blessings for lawyers led by the Catholic Lawyers Guild with whom we partner for Red Mass, and And then the law students and president and/or dean of the law school give special blessings to the faculty, and students, and administrators of St. Mary's in order to ask blessings on the administration and advocation and advocating for clients, so that it is done ethically and with compassion. Every year we have a message that the committee helps put together. Committee members, some have changed over, but many have continued to help. I was very fortunate to also get to know court reporters in San Antonio, a wonderful group that have been there every year, not only really helping in any way possible, and they always give me a jewelry piece. I have on my table here a card holder that just expresses, it's a red card holder on my desk right over here by the files. And every year they give me a special, I think it must be Brighton, but a special remembrance of Red Mass, because they were so grateful to be invited to be acknowledged as a member of the legal community. So as a result of all of this, I've just gotten to know many judges and court reporters, members of the legal community. And I guess one of my favorite stories too was Mayor Phil Harburger was then the Chief Justice Phil Harburger. And he and his wife served on the committee. Linda Harburger worked at the McNay Art Museum as a curator, and she had the wonderful idea to get red banners. She said, you need color. So we started with red banners, and then had the idea to get the legal organizations to put their logos on it. One of the Marianist brothers, who's helped me over the years, Brother Jim Jakeley, designed the banner poles and the stands. We're now at about 26 banners, and the legal organizations love being represented. They carry them in the procession. So it was a great legacy from our early days of setting up the committee. But I'll never forget when the then Chief Justice Phil Harburger was hosting a Chief Justice convention in San Antonio. And he said, well, maybe a few judges will come to it. I'm going to invite them. Maybe a few will come. At the time, the cathedral was under renovation. We were in a separate building, and I looked across to the Bexar County Courthouse, and I saw about 50 judges in line with their wives. A panic came over me, because not only was that the number of people in addition, but the cathedral was under construction, and the windows were wide open. You could hear all the traffic. I thought, it's just going to be hard to have this many people. So I think I just ran into the church, and any law students that were in pews, I quickly got them out so that I would look like we had expected the 50 other judges to come. So that night at the reception, I was just devastated. I thought, oh my gosh, this is just too much. We didn't prepare. I didn't know. I wouldn't have known in the early days to ask. And but at the reception, those judges not only enjoyed the reception, they stayed till the end, but they also said we have the Red Mass booklet, and yeah, and the Red Mass. Every year we take the photos and turn them into booklets. And anyway, so they were holding up the booklet, and they said, oh, we're going to take this back to St. Mary's. So every year we use a photo appropriate to the occasion. The committee helps me write the introduction. The history of Red Mass is dates back to the 13th century, when it officially opened the term of the court for the European countries. And the first Red Mass is recorded in the Cathedral of Paris in 1245. Around 1310, King Edward I began the tradition in England, offered at Westminster Abbey at the opening of the Michaelmas term. It received its name from the fact that the celebrant was vested in red, and the Lord High Justices were robed in brilliant scarlet. They were joined by university professors displaying red on their academic gowns. In the United States, the first red mass occurred in 1928 and is still celebrated. You'll see it on TV. The Supreme Court justices also begin their term with a red mass. San Antonio revived the tradition 69 years ago under the auspices of the law school and the Catholic Lawyers Guild. And so I've been able to assist in bringing the legal community together and our law students to pray for blessings on our judicial and academic year. Recently, I was able to get the Association of Marianist Universities to sponsor a dialogue between University of Dayton, who has a law school. We have 3 universities: University of Dayton, Chaplain University in Hawaii does not have a law school, and St. Mary's Law School. And we had a representative, so we could have a dialogue exactly on this question. So I think our Marianist characteristics of education, which hopefully are known at St. Mary's University, of formation in faith, community development, leadership, service for the common good, and adaptability to change. All those characteristics also are part of Marianist characteristics for law school. So part of what I do in law ministry is also, from the earliest day at orientation, create that spirit of an educational community. It's not that people aren't competitive at law school, because they are, but to create an atmosphere that people feel regarded, respected, the dignity of the human person. All people are welcomed at the table, and the community, I guess, is an important element. So what happens then is I create opportunities for community. So this year, for example, since we hadn't seen each other in 2 years, I had each year I had a reception after their orientation program. So the first years they had a special a day for them, but for the second years we had a little event on the patio, and then the third years I had members of our alumni community come together so that it could be a networking event. But it was really great to see people back, because last year it was just the 1Ls, and I had a, I mean, the question might be too, how did I keep going during COVID? But since we only had the 1Ls on campus last year, I had to create some other at a distance events. So even as I prepared this week for Thanksgiving, we created a Thanksgiving, several days that students could come and sit outside and enjoy at least a Thanksgiving box, rather than the typical Thanksgiving meal that would be turkey and the fixins from Aramark. This year, I'm happy that somebody else took it on and wanted to extend the idea to the Friendsgiving. That was a new one for me, but it really fit in with some of the work we were doing to bring together the affinity groups, they call them. So all those that represent different organizations, and they've worked together to bring Friendsgiving. And I think these are just samples of community building opportunities. My favorite one is we have a Women in Law Leadership Award as part of the Fourth Court of Appeals visit to St. Mary's. They judge our oral advocacy, and then they stay for a lunch and award ceremony for outstanding women leaders in the law school who are nominated by their classmates. And it's a way to honor our Women's History Month and to bring together what was, as I shared before, the Chief Justice Alma Lopez and subsequently several other judges. They're all retired and I'm still working, but the Chief Justices continue to come to St. Mary's, and now we have awards in all their names that have retired. Chief Justice Catherine Stone and Chief Justice Sandy Bryan Marion. So I think I also was part of the service. Bringing service for the common good would be really, some of my earliest days were creating service. service opportunities. We had law students before pro bono legal services was as advanced as it is. We used to do, the students, I can't believe they ever did this, but we'd serve soup at the homeless shelter. Steve Chiscano is a well-recognized lawyer in town, and he and another group of his class of '97, they would go to the Catholic Worker House, and we did a garden one year. We built ramps. So whatever were opportunities for the students to have community, to engage with each other and get to know each other, but then in turn to give back to the community. I still had the early pictures of Judge Karen Crump, who got one of the earliest Young Law Alumni Awards. I still had pictures of her with the two guys building the ramp. Now, how I ever knew how to build a ramp is beyond me, but I guess I figured it out. I got some help, and they had to do it. So I still had her early pictures. She's been a judge and well-regarded attorney. But I just love that I have that kind of history. I was fortunate that there were other people came and at least were part-time pro bono, but currently Greg Zlotnick is the director of the pro bono program, and he and I really have worked well together. He's taken over much of the pro bono programs and interacts with many of the legal organizations to give our law students experience, practical experience. So we moved from some of the hands-on. Habitat for Humanity would be an early opportunity, but now we're in any number of agencies. There's a new San Antonio Legal Services that's supported by the San Antonio Bar Association. It was the Community Justice Program. There's just many groups that really welcome our law students to help with wills, divorces. Sad about that, but there's a need for the paperwork, for Veterans Affairs, so much that they can observe and help with that gives them a real feel for what it's like to be a lawyer. I guess I'm probably well known for the spring break service trips that originally started out in South Texas, in McAllen, Brownsville, Edinburgh area. And our legal community there was so helpful. Judge Israel Ramon, to this day, still sponsors students in his judicial office. And he was an undergrad and law grad. So they were one of the first groups that also then hosted a reception. So our students would work during the week. Several of those students, one of them, Amanda Rivas, is now our extern director. And she was one of the early ones that also helped with our program in McAllen, South Texas. I knew nothing about South Texas, and then the dean said Dean Cantu wanted us to go to South Texas. And I was like, again, I just lucked out that somebody had done their master's degree and worked on the border. So I went with them. I learned a little bit about what the work might be. And again, that grew into what we still do today. By pre-COVID, that last year, 2019, it was the last thing I did before COVID hit so strongly. I was still traveling because we were at 8 cities in Texas and DC. I had a dream that our law students would experience something outside of Texas, and I wanted them to go to where lawmaking occurs. And we were able to find agencies to support our law students for the week and giving them an opportunity to learn in different agencies in DC. So I had just come back from DC through Dallas. Again, our Dallas Alumni Network is super. Judge Dominic Collins has regularly taken 5 or 6 students to learn the ropes, what it's like to be in the court system, and continues each year. An alumni group has developed some of their own, either their own opportunities or know about to connect us with different agencies. And then each city hosts a reception. So law students can also learn about what careers would be like in that city. I've fundraised for that. That's been one of my gifts, is that people joke that people just hand me money. but it's been true. I hardly ever ask unless I have to, and the alumni board started very generously and has continued to support our spring break service trips. So I just think that's it was sad when we had to stop it, but again, thanks to Greg Zlotnick, he knew how to help the students get into remote work, so we trained them for remote work, and I knew about, through one of my judicial connections, about some grant opportunities. So thanks to Melanie Call and Greg and myself, we were able to get 2 grants to enable students to work in person if that was an opportunity, or to do remote work. And I guess our biggest accomplishment last summer, again partnering with our career services, our career strategy office, Robin Thorner, we were able to, and thanks to Dean Patricia Roberts, we were able to offer 26 summer fellowships, 26 paid summer fellowships. So again, students got practical experiences, and the offices are ever grateful for 10 weeks of law students giving them assistance to help so many clients in need. So just returning to the original question about how I am influenced as a Marianist sister at the Marianist University in our ministry, I think those characteristics are very important, and we were able to translate them into how we would perceive them at law school, especially as I've described, the service opportunities, our work at the Center for Legal and Social Justice, and really regarding the clients, serving the clients, responding to needs, especially I guess recently, the evictions for the homeless. Genevieve Guajardo created a program as director, as one of the clinicians at the center. That was, again, a well-regarded and well-needed program for those facing eviction. So I think working at the law school, I guess it's just second nature to me that I do what I do because I am a Marianist, and I guess I translate it into practical ways, whether that's community building opportunities, recognition and helping students understand their vocation as an attorney, and supporting them in faith, not just Red Mass, but other opportunities to come to pray together. All our events have prayer at the beginning, and students will come in for a prayer, especially during exams. There's a rush on prayers during that time. I had one fellow that used to come in for his Jewish prayer, since he was Jewish, so I certainly regarded that request. And yes, so I think while we're a Catholic and Marianist law school, the ministry is to people of all faiths, as I've always said. And I think helping law students to develop this attitude of service.
Were you the first woman chaplain here at St. Mary's?
Let's see. I'm the first woman chaplain at the law school. And again, we didn't have that long of a history. Father John G. Elias had followed before me. So it's very interesting because it was a woman law dean that hired me, and we're cycling back again, and now our law dean is Patricia Roberts. So I regard being a Marianist sister. I love the spirit of our Marianist family, that we're priests, brothers, sisters, and lay people. So I think it's the complementariness of our Marianist charism. The gift in our church is that we work together. So a number of the Marianist priests will help me in the ministry, provide sacramental support. So yes, I'm the first woman I worked with. I was trying to think, in law ministry, in undergraduate ministry, there would have been several other Marianist sisters in the early days. But I think when I went to undergrad was the first time we also had a lay woman on the staff. Since then we've diversified, certainly, but yes, I was the first woman law chaplain. I guess that's my claim to fame there. Well, certainly I love that part of our Marianist charism, and the scripture we often refer to is Mary and Jesus at the wedding feast of Cana, when Mary recognized the need for this couple that they're running out of wine, and she tells the servants to talk to her son about it, and that's the miracle of the jugs of wine that are even better wine than they had at the beginning. I love the story of do whatever he tells you, and hopefully that means we do listen to what Jesus tells me. So I guess if Jesus has told me I should do a party, I must have listened. So yes, there's so much need for celebration and good opportunities to do socializing. I guess the early days, I wanted to start recognizing law students and their service contributions. So in those days, Mary Stitch, I'm still friends with her. She was in career services, and I can remember to this day standing outside with her, and the students had just had their graduation picture. But they there was nothing happening, and some of them, I think, went to the parking lot, maybe popped a champagne cork. And I said to her, I wish we could do something. We really need to have some kind of recognition when they're getting their picture taken for graduation, and this is their last time on campus. And she and I right away just clicked on this idea of Fiesta Farewell. So we began the Fiesta Farewell, which was had to get special permission to have the margarita machines at noon. And we would, over time, I got different people to sponsor awards. So there's now a whole award plaques mounted nicely over in the law classroom building to recognize students for outstanding leadership. We have one for the most advanced 3L who maybe didn't start out as strong, but really through Beth Watkins honoring her, Judge Beth Watkins honoring her father. There's the Most Improved Law Student Award. The class of 77 had some money left over, and they asked me what they could use it for. I said, oh, how about an award in your name? And it'll be a fund that never runs out, which is true, it hasn't. The Law Alumni sponsored a Law Alumni Law Ministry Service Award. Dean Cantu, after he retired too, the Dean Cantu Spirit of Service Award. So there's probably about St. Thomas More Award for Outstanding Catholic Student in Leadership, the Christian Citizenship Award for an outstanding student who demonstrates the Christian faith in action. So part of the party was if you had a party and you were doing the awards. So we would have the fiesta. It was during fiesta time, so it lent itself to margaritas, let's put it that way. And again, the last 2 years, sadly, that was devoid of the party. I'd say but last year I reinvented. You just had to keep reinventing things. I go to many law alumni events. So the law students that once were at a party with me here. Now, again, I might be well known for this, but it's not that there are that many of them, but I guess they had a good time, or it was novel to, have a little glass of wine with a nun. But I've, continued so many of these relationships years later, and I go to a lot of legal events. And I'm happy to do that, and grateful that the legal community gets together fairly often. They like to do a lot of fundraising events. So there's a lot of galas. Our Distinguished Law Alumni dinner is one of my favorites. So yes, they might start out at a reception with me here on campus, but also continue to socialize with me well after graduation. I guess because we didn't have many parties. I think the early days there weren't, I guess it was novel, to have some parties, because that wouldn't have been necessarily something that the law students, they might have gatherings off campus, but to have actually a school. Oh, I think the best one was for my 70th birthday. That was fun. I just celebrated my 70th birthday, and Dean Roberts asked me what I wanted, and I'm not really a cake eater. So, and again, listening to the spirit of do whatever he tells you, was do whatever she tells you, but I asked for a toast. I said, I just want a toast. Since we have this pub that was actually, the pub was in my day when I went to law school. I didn't frequent it as much because I was in the early days of being a nun, but I knew about it. And then, so when it comes back many years later, it's been fun to have that as a venue on campus. So I can have some events where we're at the pub with law students. One of the competitions I have is for students to bring in the most Halloween candy. We would have a Halloween festival outside. We'd bring children from the shelters and our own children, and housekeeping and physical plant, their kids and grandkids. But to get the candy, I had a competition, and the competition prize is you get a party. So the section that brings in the most candy gets a party. So I guess that's another party I would be doing. And some of the remnants are still, yes. We this year again we couldn't have children on campus, sadly, because we're still a little afraid of that. But we took oh my gosh, I forget, 800 pounds of candy to the shelters. We made baskets for families, our own law school families, and baskets for housekeeping and physical plant. So we had to reinvent reinvent how we did the Halloween again this year. But the agencies were so grateful because they couldn't take their kids either, so they were grateful for the candy. So I'm still awaiting the section. Sometimes when we didn't have the pub, I'd have the party for the section that won at Lisa's, the Mexican restaurant down the street. And I still laugh with two of the fellows who are my research assistants. I'm very fortunate students work with me. And so we were sitting at the entrance of Lisa's so I could hand out drink tickets. And it was kind of, they were my bodyguards. They were my bouncers on either side. We still laugh about it. But again, it was just, it's a short opportunity because law students are really busy doing their studies. But there's a real need to celebrate accomplishments. We have a lot of other the Scholar and the Law Journal would have a nice banquet. Board of Advocates has their banquet. So I have, just a few of my signature events that, again, just celebrates our service. I had never really traveled overseas, and because I was from Philadelphia, a little suburban town, and my family home, we were fortunate our grandparents had a little summer seaside cabin. Still exists in our family, updated. But my world was Philadelphia, New Jersey. A big trip was to go to Boston, where our grandparents were. So I never envisioned myself living in Texas, and I'm here all these years. But I certainly didn't envision myself going overseas. I still remember the opportunity. The then Dean Bill Pyatt, we were at an event and in discussing about, have you ever gone to Innsbruck? I said, oh no, I just haven't. No, I haven't had the opportunity. It wasn't I didn't even know what it was, I think, because it was still the early days. And he said, well, you should, get the opportunity. So he arranged it. I'm not sure that people quite understood why I was going, but luckily, again, I was able to see opportunities there. And over time, but I was scared. I got to tell you, it was a hard summer. My mother had been in the hospital. So by the time I even got on that plane, I was not sure if I should have gone or not, but my brother people assured me it'd be okay. So I went, and I went to the counter, and I still laugh at this. I've been a United Flyer all the time, but I went to the counter and I just told him how nervous I was about flying internationally. And I don't know why I told the gate agent. Nowadays people aren't this personable, but they said, okay, well, you know what we'll do? We'll put you in the very back of the plane, and if there's a need to balance out the plane, now I had no clue what that meant, to balance out the plane, somehow my body weight was being able to be shifted to first class. So to this day, I had no reason for for doing that, except I must have looked desperate. And sure enough, I walk in that plane, God must have just smiled on me and said, here's a first class ticket. So I was up in first class and had a lovely meal, went to sleep, and I woke up in Innsbruck. So I was glad, or at least in Frankfurt, I was grateful to this day for the early opportunity to fly being easy. And then I just had such a good time visiting with the faculty and staff. So subsequently, I just kept getting asked back again. I guess two stories that are pertinent to the Innsbruck program. I would take the faculty out for dinner, and sponsored under law ministry, because I really didn't get to spend, as Father John G. spent many times with them in the lunchroom upstairs. That's not been something I'm able to do usually. And so I took them out to dinner, and they really enjoyed the camaraderie of each other. They knew each other over the years. And Professor Flint turned to me and he said, you know, this is so nice of you to do this. He said, I used to do this. I used to barbecue and have people over. And so I said to him, well, why don't we do it again? And, you know, we could have students come, we could have faculty come, we could market the Innsbruck program so more people even know about it. And he thought that was a great idea. So as we got back, we put together, and now for many years, he's been barbecuing and he brews his own beer. So this is a very popular event for students to attend. Maybe this is another party that they get to know me at. And faculty can talk about the Innsbruck program, and then we get students who have come to talk about the program. Professor Flint also donates a scholarship as well. So the funds he raises from all of it is his own donation of cooking and buying the supplies, and the students who receive his scholarship get to help with the barbecue. And so that was something born out of the Innsbruck program. And also I just followed up. Every year I follow up with, in remembrance, Carol Thompson, her daughter Sarah Thompson, had gone to Innsbruck one of the years I was there. And she had been at a party not sponsored by the law school, but just a party with a group of friends. And in a sad tragedy, as she was kind of darting across the street quickly, somebody, a convicted drunk driver or drugs, ran into her and she was killed. It was a very sad time. I was around also, it was just very sad for the students who knew her. But the family was so faith-filled. To this day, I communicate regularly, or at least often enough to keep supporting and recognizing Carol Thompson and her Thompson family and all who donated, because they wanted to honor Sarah's wonderful memory going to Innsbruck. And they've done that with creating a scholarship, and she created an ongoing in her will for that scholarship to continue. So any of the students that get a scholarship in her name, in Sarah's name, I also have them send their scholarship application that we developed the criteria for to Mrs. Thompson, so she can see how appreciative the students are for this support. And I was just glad to, she went, it's such a hard time, and she has her faith really supported the faith community in her town. Tyler, Texas really supported her. She went into grief counseling recently, and I've even referred students to her to talk about maybe when they've had a tragic hit and run accident. So again, that was an opportunity. Another law firm, I had gotten to know one of the students that was helping me with an event, met them, and she was talking about Innsbruck, and they subsequently also asked me could they donate to an Innsbruck scholarship. So that one continues, and several faculty have also donated. So we have a number, oh yeah, that was fun. Marshall Bowen, I was sitting with Marshall Bowen on the top of what they call the lantern hike. Now, you're supposed to hike up the mountain, and then you go to this kind of cabin, and there's German music and dancing. And I can't hike up the mountain, so I was in the taxi that went up the mountain. But I was sitting with him and his wife and his mother, and his mother's sister was all there. And Marshall was saying to me, oh, how would I go about if I wanted to donate to the Innsbruck program? How would I go about that? And I said, oh, well, here's what I do and how we do it. And I had no idea that he was part of the Shields Ayers Foundation family. And while he couldn't guarantee anything, he told us how to apply. And we were, again, fortunate that we had a 3-year commitment to help students attend the Innsbruck program. So I value all these connections, because I went to Innsbruck just because somebody said, did you want to go? And then as a result, I've found peanut butter and jelly over in Innsbruck to give the students a little taste of home. And I get to also live with one of the now retired faculty. He met his wife over in Innsbruck, and she was from America but had taught at University of Innsbruck. And I live with them in the summer. So, or 2 weeks of the summer. So I must say that first trip really turned into so many good relationships and memories, and getting to know students in a much different setting. I even in the early days, I can't believe I did this, but we lived in a dorm together, so I'm grateful that I live in a house now. But we lived in this dorm, and I made, somehow I got pots, I got spaghetti and meatballs, and we had a spaghetti dinner. I cooked for 30 people. I couldn't do that now, but, well, I probably could. Party might be appropriate question. But now the students live in more of the Airbnbs, so it's not the dorm life as it once was. But I could just I do take out students to German beer garden and with the faculty, and we have a very nice event celebrating just being in Innsbruck together. So again, people have funded these opportunities. So it's, I guess the gift I've been given, I was able to give back to others.